Hey everybody, Kendall with Blackovis, and I'm here with Jerry and Zach from AGC, Alaska Guide Creations. Their brand new pack, the Kobuk. Did I pronounce it correctly?
Yep. Yeah.
Probably plenty of guys are screwing that thing up on the first try. But in this video, we are going to fit Jerry with the pack, as like most people, or a lot of guys, you're probably not getting this, I'd say probably, I don't know, I'm just estimating, 60% of the guys have not tried this on before they got it. So it lands in their home. This is what they have. They've purchased the frame with the bag. I've got the 42 on here. This is my pack. Zach, run us through first off the adjustability elements, and then second, let's throw it on Jerry and let's fit it to him. And hopefully this gives you some guidelines and some reference that you can use, or the guys, our customers can use when they're fitting the Kobuk pack to them on the first go. And then we'll talk a little bit about, I want you to mention, we were talking about this off camera, but what you should do as far as once you get it where you think it's good, and then some of the things that we want to do to really get it dialed in. So, Zach, why don't you run us through some of the movements and the variability pieces that I actually think are super interesting with the design of your pack here.
Yeah, for sure. So first thing you're gonna ever do when you get it is, you're gonna put it on before you move anything. But when you do go to make your adjustments, before you do
this up a little bit just so the camera can see.
Yeah, before you do anything, you open up the lumbar pad. And the lumbar pad itself is adjustable as far as where it lies.
And that's fixed, like it's sewn in the back. It doesn't come out.
Yeah, you can't lose it.
Yep.
You're not going to lose it up on the mountain. But when you pull it off, you can ride that a little lower, or if you get to a spot and you're like, man, I like it a little higher in my lower back, you can pull it up a little bit. You have roughly an inch and a half of adjustment vertically there, and that can make the difference of a really comfortable day or a day that is not so good for you.
And you've got adjustability in the shoulder strap, of course, for the height, but this is just a little bit more of just a fine tuning element, not necessarily like this is a big deal.
Exactly.
At least that's the way I'm perceiving it.
Yeah, exactly. Or you get real heavy, and it's heavy's heavy.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what pack you have. You run on a heavy pack and you're like, man, partway through the hike, I just want to change that just a little and get that pressure just shifted. Mm-hmm. And you can do that fast.
Gotcha. Underneath here, the waist belt itself has you've got hook and loop throughout this entire bottom section. It's going to come just like this. What are some of the movements that we're going to do now, but eventually we're going to do when we put it on Jerry?
Yeah, for sure. So each side of the belt can be completely removed. That's where you can do horizontal adjustment. You really want to make sure when you do that you stay centered. You don't want your belt shifted to one side or the other.
Gotcha.
And it's pretty easy to see that with the stitching to keep yourself in the center of that frame. You can also go vertical adjustment. That's not really, it's possible, and it may be something someone wants to play with a little bit. We usually recommend running it right at the bottom of the frame.
You're running this almost parallel to the bottom of the frame right there.
Yeah.
I think you're up just barely, like maybe a half a centimeter there, if anything.
Yeah, and so that gives you adjustability on your hip belt to where you have enough foam that you're not having webbing dig into your stomach when you cinch it down. But if you're a smaller person, you can adjust it around, and you don't have it to where you have foam touching foam.
Yeah.
You can suck it in and make sure you have a little bit of gap there, that you have some tensioning ability.
Since this pack is pretty much a one size fits everybody, you were saying the waist differences go from 28 inches up to about 47 inches?
Correct.
So from really small, petite, to a big fella.
Yeah.
Very large fella.
Yeah, and honestly, you probably could go even a little smaller than that if you started overlapping these some.
That's what we were talking about earlier. You can, because it's got hook and loop on both sides, you can overlap those if you really wanted to get in, just so long as you're not interfering with the lumbar, and you almost get to where it's seamless between the lumbar and the waist belt itself. There isn't a gap if you're going the smallest way.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So it truly is like, we don't have multiple belt sizes. It's one belt, and you adjust it to where you like it.
Gotcha. Perfect. How about the shoulders and the top of the frame?
So on the shoulders, the first thing you want to do when you look at the shoulders, you're gonna take off disconnect the load lifting strap, and when you look in there, you're gonna see that there's a rigid connection here with webbing and a ladder lock, and that's kind of like you guys talked about in part one's video, is that more than anything, that's a mental thing. The Velcro is plenty strong to hold it.
Gotcha.
But it gives you a little bit of that sense of security, like there is something else holding this down. You know, on the bottom half, it's that extra long Velcro, you know, to where you're having an extreme force, shear force to pull that off. When it's against your back.
It'd be darn near impossible. I mean,
yeah.
You're not going to survive that fall, but the pack might survive that fall if that absolutely shears off. It's a tremendous amount of load that's going to take.
For sure. So when you loosen that up, you have the ability to move that shoulder harness on both sides up and down, and you also have the ability to shift it, cant it some. So guys with larger necks, or they just want their load to be out farther, or they want it in a little bit, you have that ability to do a little bit of cant there just to get it where it's most comfortable for you.
Would that also be like something beneficial for a gal that might be like large chest that wants to have that strap run a little bit like more here versus kind of down the center of their chest?
Correct. Yeah, you can create the orientation of, you know, the aspect that it comes out.
Okay.
It gives you just a little bit of flexibility there.
I see.
To where you really can customize it to you instead of only being able to run vertically.
And the width of the shoulder strap actually it gets wider right through this area, and then it finally comes out. So the wide part is really against the back, and then this more constant width comes from basically the top of the scapula all the way over to the bottom of the chest here.
Yeah, correct. And then so once you do that, you get your adjustment horizontal, you know, cant, and vertically. You know, you press it back down. You have a retaining strap here that is another rigid connection to where you're not relying on just the Velcro. And again, not to hold it on, but to where if you pick the pack up and you don't have tension on your load lifter, you're no doubt going to have tension here.
Yep.
And it's just a little peace of mind thing. It's a very common thing on backpacks today to have a Velcro attachment, but that sound, if it's new to you, it may be something that concerns you a little bit.
This is as far as any tips or tricks to guys that are trying to kind of isolate this so you can actually move it, but you're not getting that hook. Have you ever run like a piece of plastic under here or anything to try and just a little bit more freedom, because these lock down and they don't really have a lot of play in them. So the adjustability, I don't know what you used in the past.
So what I actually do is once you start making your adjustments, I leave this loose until I get it where I want it. And I actually just run my hand under it.
Okay.
And then grab it and pull it.
I see.
And then once you get it where you want, then I undo the Velcro, tighten this up completely tight. And then I pull the tension back to where I know I'm setting it right where I wanted it.
Perfect.
Back again.
Okay.
With this under full tension.
Okay, that's interesting. And that I've not seen that this lock piece or this type of piece on some of the other packs that I've run in the past.
And then the last step then is you come up to your load lifter, and part of that is going to be this webbing guide panel. Once you set it, we're going to do it in just a minute here on Jerry, and make sure we get the contact point to where your angle coming off from the load lifter is landing in the correct spot on your body. It should be roughly on your clavicle. A little different for everyone, but if you're close to your clavicle, then you're going to be pretty close to fitting, and then you can make some minor tweaks that really fit it for you. And I encourage you to do that. You know, take it out, run it. Don't run it dry. Run it with weight. Then that's when you're really going to feel it.
Gotcha. So now that you've got it on him, where do you start? Do you start at the bottom, or do you start at the top? What are you fixing, or what are you looking at first when we're trying to get it fit?
So I always start with my waist because I want the waist where it's supposed to be before I start looking at the shoulders. If that waist is disconnected, the shoulders are going to it's going to sit down, but your waist may be clear down on your thighs.
Perfect.
So yeah, that's where I always start. And in front of a mirror is one of the best ways to do this.
Gotcha.
You look at the mirror, you can see the front where you're coming across. You turn sideways, and you're going to be able to see the same view you're seeing on Jerry right here.
Gotcha.
Yourself. So
some guys like to go. I know some guys will go. They'll find the top of their waist, that hip bone right there, and run the pad kind of in the middle. Some guys will run them a little lower. Coming from the backpacking world, I've talked to a lot of guys that were really adamant about where that's placed. But are you just going off of comfort, or are you looking for a particular location on the iliac crest or the hip bone?
Yeah, so mine personally, I always have found the best comfort is I'm pretty high on the hip bone. I wouldn't say I'm over it, but I'm pretty high on the hip bone. Part of that's going to be, if you've never backpacked, you're going to have to figure out what you like the best.
Sure.
Is at least my opinion.
Most hunters have run a backpack of sorts, so.
Yeah, and they're going to know where they like it to see, and you know how it is. Like, you put a backpack on, you know if it's in the right spot.
Absolutely.
Once you've done it for a little bit.
So we've got Jerry. Jerry's got the bag on. Then what? What's next?
So right now we can see that this strap is, the belt's adjusted too small for Jerry. There's too much webbing coming across the front of his thighs and his stomach.
The portion here of the waist belt is not necessarily wrapped around. It's just really just sitting on the sides.
Yeah. So if he got loaded down and he really strapped this in, he's going to be getting dug into by that webbing portion of the belt.
Okay.
So we know instantly that needs adjusted before we start doing anything with
Perfect. Let's change that, and we'll come back to what it should look like.
Okay. So one thing that you really want to make sure is you want to be level across the top of these two. You don't want one part of your belt taller or shorter than the other.
Obviously, yeah.
And then center down the pack. And with the stitch lines, you're going to be able to really eyeball center pretty easy. You're also going to be able to go off the lumbar pad.
Because the lumbar pad has these lines, and it looks like Jerry. We asked Jerry what he liked, and he said more or less in this location, which interestingly kind of aligns with that lumbar pad, with the lumbar lines of the lumbar pad.
Yeah. So once you have those, you want to make sure they're level. Make sure that you're equal distance from the middle if you are beyond the middle, or equal distance overlapped if you're that way. Pull the lumbar pad up, and that's an easy transition. If we get it there and Jerry's like, I like it higher or lower, so I just pull it up first thing. That's probably the last thing I'll adjust. And you probably really won't know the difference till you have weight anyway.
Sure.
One really important thing is once you get that where you want it, there are the tie-in points of the belt on both sides, and you really want to make sure that's tied in tight.
You don't want anything loose on that particular point.
Correct. Yeah, because if that starts coming loose,
this thing is going to wobble.
You're going to have this kind of wobble here, and the noise. Again, not going to come off, but it's going to bug you.
Gotcha.
So you want to make sure that's nice and tight, and then I like to suck it back through.
Obviously, yeah, that just makes sense. Then it's not slipping. There's no way that thing's coming out and coming loose.
Yep. And then you do the same thing on the opposite side. And any accessory you put there, that tucks in under it.
Perfect.
You don't even see it.
Okay, now he's got it back on. That waist belt probably feels a lot better, Jerry.
Yeah, that's good.
And
yeah,
as we can see on the front, why don't you turn a little bit? That definitely comes around a lot more.
Yeah, and again, that's going to be personal preference to an extent as well. How far you want it to come around. Some people are going to want more. Some people are going to want less, and it's just one of those things. And anyone that puts it on, they'll get to a point where they know what home is.
The other thing I will mention, and you touched on it before, was put a lot of weight in the pack, because there's no, I've had packs that they're perfect, they're great. I get a ton of weight in them. I'm really just yarding on those to cinch it down, just to really snug it in, and suddenly I'm running out of a waist belt.
Yeah.
And so that, certainly. Don't just rely on the dry weight fit, but also the weighted fit.
Yeah, cool. Absolutely. So now we'll go to the shoulders. Let's have you pull down on those. All right, so if you look at the shoulders there, the strap is above nipple line. I know that, and we're a little off kilter, like one's lower than the other, so there are a couple issues there. Two, there's a huge gap under his shoulder. What we really should have here is about a hand gap.
Gotcha.
Just if you can slide your fingers under there and touch top and bottom, that's good. You don't want it all the way snug to you before it's loaded, because then there's nowhere for the pack to move.
Gotcha.
And you don't want it that big to where you have
I've
a
seen
big
plenty
peak.
of guys in the field like that, and you just
yeah.
It just must be so uncomfortable.
For sure. And part of that is you can see where the strap from the load lifter's contacting him. It's technically, like, if you translate that line down, you're behind the apex of his shoulder. And we really, like we talked about, we want that contact point to really be about the clavicle line.
So let's make that change, and we'll see what that looks like afterwards.
Okay. Pull out the load lifting strap. Now we're free there, and then you're going to loosen this up. And you probably don't want to take it all the way out. So once you pull up there, and then you can just kind of finger walk that up.
Okay.
Until you get under, and then same thing from the back side, finger walk it up until you get under that. And then your hands under, you can really make the sliding motion.
That does slide really well.
So once
this process may take a while. I mean, if a guy is doing it on his own, he might do this 4, 5, 6 times, trying to adjust it, get it to that right spot. And you'll know once you start figuring out what movements make what change, this becomes probably much, much simpler.
Yeah, exactly. And so if you get, and once you get it where you're close, I would still say take it off one more time, reference your spot, and then pull this up and cinch this down tight. Cinch this back piece down really tight.
Then you're setting the top length of that. It won't slide down.
Yeah, you can't mess it up then.
Okay, perfect.
Then you pull that off and you pull down and you make your contact.
Pulling down on the shoulder strap itself here.
Yep, and you make your contact. And then you're gonna do the same thing on this side. When both are done, this extra webbing, honestly, once you have it set for you, you can trim this up quite a bit.
Gotcha.
Trim it and burn it. You can also just run it into these webbing guides and allow it to be out of sight, out of mind.
Kind of a storage bin, if you are a storage location for that.
Yeah, to where it's, it's down in the shoulder harness, and you're not gonna have extra danglers.
Gotcha. That's interesting. Now, if you're putting this through here, if you're running that extra strap through there, does that limit now your ability to utilize that hole?
Typically what you see is as you go lower or higher, most of the time, most guys, the adjustment here is not as...
It's going to be here versus up at the top.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so...
That makes a ton of sense.
And the adjustment here is far less than you think, as far as as much taller than you are than I am.
Right.
We're not a lot different from here to here.
From the top of the shoulder
there's
to
just
the clavicle.
Not that much going on.
You're exactly right.
So
cool.
And then again, you're really going to want to, unless you have a really unique build, you're going to want to make sure these are
exactly
level.
The same. Yep.
Yeah.
Loosening that. What do you call this? That locker?
So that's a snap-in ladder lock.
Ladder lock, okay.
So loosen that. Just finger walk it up, and then finger walk it down. And once your hand's under it, you're set. Then you're gonna get to where you're pretty close to level.
If this is my pack, I mean, yeah, maybe you'd even take a pencil or a Sharpie and just kind of mark that. So who knows, let's say I borrow this to my son, I can put it right back to the exact same spot that I want. But if I'm fitting this, I might even make a little tick mark on one, just with like a pencil or something or maybe a little piece of chalk until it's finally dialed, and then you're set. And that way you're kind of referencing each spot as you do it. That's just something I was thinking might be helpful. But, I've got 3 boys, and they seem to inherit or hope to inherit a lot of my gear. So if I was going to go back to that or fit or borrow this out, I would probably measure that, or I'd probably mark that myself.
Absolutely. And I think even as you're fitting, it's not a bad idea to mark each step. It's not going to hurt the pack.
Yeah.
And then where, because if you change it, and then you're like, oh, I liked the last one.
You don't even know where that was.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm going to tweak it and try it. Oh, I actually really liked that last one. I did better. And now you know.
Yep.
Just give yourself some reference points. And it's pretty straightforward, but you can you put a pack on the ground, you can get a little confused which direction you need to go.
True.
So having those reference points helps.
Okay.
All right, so just again, seeing how it was on Jerry the very first time, how high this was, I'm positive we're gonna have to drop this contact point down. And most people are gonna be through this first one. Once you get it adjusted to where you wanna be.
Right there.
Most people are gonna be through this first one.
That one right here.
Yep.
Okay.
And if you're a different frame, you could maybe go in 2. Likely.
So if that was the case, you would pull this out, run it underneath, and come out this second one here. Gotcha.
Exactly.
Super easy. So we'll re-engage that. Zach, where do you typically like to have the chest strap?
So I'm goofy personally. Most of the time, if I'm not heavy, I don't run it.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. That's probably a me thing.
Sure.
Because everyone else I see.
That is a you thing. I can vouch for that.
Everyone else I see runs it all the time. So I'm probably the wrong guy to ask for that. When I'm heavy, I just put it wherever I can, try to really cinch that weight toward my chest.
Sure.
I would assume, without having it on and thinking about it, I would say, mid chest. You don't want real high up towards your collarbone.
Yeah.
But you don't want to be clear down under.
Under like nipple line, if you were.
Yeah, and you're gonna have your bino pack on, and
I usually like to have it just a little bit above nipple line, or kind of like, say, the base of my armpit. I'm going down about 1.5 inches or 2, and coming across. But I also know, like, if you're breathing hard, man, sometimes it's actually quite nice. Or you're carrying a heavy load. It is nice sometimes to loosen it up just to get your shoulder straps moving in a different spot. Mm-hmm. But I do mix it up from time to time.
So yeah, you can see on Jerry, the straps now are coming in at the correct spot, about nipple line, and we're making contact. Jerry's collarbone is right here, and we're making contact real close to that collarbone with his body. And then one of the most important things is this here, is you have
just a little bit of space.
You have a little bit of space there to where you can, and Jerry can probably reach up in there and do it himself.
Changes the look.
Changes it a little bit.
But like you were saying before, if he's got a mirror there, he could look over at a mirror and see, yep, I've got about that much space, or maybe his wife or a buddy or whatever could kind of look at that and say, yep, you're in the right spot.
Yeah, and then so now that we're there, I do want to really show one part about the frame.
Yeah.
Go ahead and cinch down on your load lifters, Jerry.
Let me loosen them.
So that's when they're loose. When there's no load on the frame at all from the top side, and you're going to really see the top of that load, or the top of that frame, hug Jerry's back when he cinches down.
Oh yeah, the frame itself bends in this way, and certainly if you've got weight, there's going to be resistance. It may not actually cinch back like that.
Yeah.
I did notice when he pulled that down, it created more of a gap here. Would you recommend that he loosen that a little bit and not run it so tight, or will the weight of, if you had this loaded down, would the weight of that change the way that outcome is there?
So there'd definitely be some change depending on how heavy your load was. Mm-hmm. But if you're like this, almost everything now is going to be pushing in his chest and on his hips.
Gotcha.
Because as you pull on this, the top half of the frame's half as rigid as the bottom half, just the way the mount posts are.
Gotcha.
The 3D printed parts, the hardware.
Yep. Stuff we talked about in the first video.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so what you're having there is you're having a lever action.
Gotcha.
You have a moment arm here, and this bottom half's stiff, so it's trying to, almost like a diving board.
Gotcha.
So it's pulling that weight into his hips, which you want, but he's too tight here pulling this up. And when you get heavy and that can pull down, you're good. And eventually it gets heavy enough, you'll pull it as tight as you want.
Very interesting.
But that'll almost, Jerry can tell you, when you cinch that down, you can feel that really pulling into your chest to where it's hugging you, and the load's actually pulling into you as well.
That's it. The uniqueness of the frame. We talked about this in the first video, which is of this series with AGC, is that build, or that part in the center of the frame really becomes this 2 different areas of the frame that can act independent in some ways, and this is the case for that, where the frame can start hugging into the body as the body starts, instead of staying vertical, the body starts moving on the upper back, and that load gets in. Because the closer that load gets in here, the more comfortable it's going to ride, especially as you get more weight in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then one last thing is, you can see even pulled to him tight like that, there's good breathability in the pack. You have your lumbar pad on your lower back and your hip belt, and then you have a gap between there and your shoulder harness. So you have good airflow between your shoulders and your hip belt, and in between your shoulders.
That's also going to make not just a difference for him, but also, you're going to have a lot of heat coming off your back right here. If you've got meat there, just having a little bit of airflow is going to reduce the heat that ends up on that meat. It's almost inescapable. You're going to have some of your body heat heating up that meat, and that's you always see it. It's more kind of bloody and more like warm against the body, but that might help for a little bit of that air conditioning in there.
For sure.
Perfect. Well, Zach, I appreciate you going through this. I hope this has been useful for anyone that's watching this. Fitting the AGC pack to yourself, by yourself, or potentially with a buddy. But Zach, appreciate you being here. Jerry, thanks for coming in. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you found use in this, leave us a comment below. Call us up, hit us up with our gear guys. We can help get you dialed in on the right accessories you might need, because we carry the entire line for the brand new Kobuk pack from Alaska Guide Creations.